Hello everyone, this is part 11 of What If Naruto Left Konoha and Obtains Jiongu, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Fu bounded through the forest, only partially aware of the increasing density in tree foliage. Per Naruto's instruction, she'd gone around the battle, but had come across a disturbed trail that merited investigation. Hesitantly leaving the blonde to his own devices, as he'd requested, she was still in the process of following the trail when a burst of foul chakra rippled across her skin, causing her to shiver. The Jinchuriki stopped abruptly and whirled around, eyes wide. What was that? She gasped. Her only response was the Nanabe's grating laughter in her mind. Shaking her head, she returned to her path, trying to focus on the assignment she'd set for herself. She took a deep breath to calm down, thoughts unwillingly roving back to her fellow Jinchuriki and, considering their recent run-in with him, their wayward mentor. It was hard, she realized, to not worry about either of them, even despite the confidence she had in their abilities. Kakazu was the epitome of a veteran shinobi, having seen almost a century of how the world worked, and gained an equivalent amount of experience. He was well versed in the existence of most, if not all, major clans and Kekkei Genkai, and his mastery of the 5 main elemental affinities made him a force to be reckoned with. That wasn't even including the power he was granted by Jiongu or the extra lives he possessed. On the other side of the coin, Naruto easily had the most potential of any ninja in their generation. He possessed the same capacity for nature chakra manipulation and resilience that Kakazu had because of the same kinjutsu running through their bodies. Even beyond that, he was the container of the Kyuubi, the strongest of the Biju. His resolve to continue forward in the path Kakazu had set him on and his growing desire to prove himself capable of following his mentor were impressive and admirable personality traits. Both were the only people who had ever really accepted Fu. If something ever happened to either of them, well, she really wasn't sure what she would do. ZZT, chuckled the Nanabe, something already has happened. What do you mean? Fu asked aloud, ignoring the wince of pain that always came with speaking to the Biju. That chakra burst was the Kyuubi breaking free. The Kyuubi. Naruto. Fu whirled again, torn by indecision, but then shook her head. No, I need to trust that he'll be okay. Sentimental cretin. Fu pushed forward, ignoring the words of her prisoner and the apprehension that gripped her heart like an icy claw. Eventually, she entered a small clearing surrounded by lush foliage. In the center was a pit of broken rocks. She moved to stand at its rim, staring down at the rubble. Wonder what's down here. You have company. Fu glanced around to find a herd of deer surrounding her, staring her down. Okay, she drawled, that's new. One of the deer charged her, and Fu immediately ran through hand seals and crouched. Doton, Doruheiki. The stag ran into an earthen wall which rose from the ground to defend the green-haired girl. 3 more animals charged her, forcing her to push more chakra into the earth to erect 3 more barriers, forming a box around the hole in the ground. Now safe from the deer, Fu settled into a more comfortable position and cracked her knuckles. Alright, time to get to work. Doton, Doruha. Rocks and earth rose from the pit in a wave and were deposited as far from the hole as possible. Fu continued to excavate the pit with the earth flow wave, digging deeper and deeper, all the while wondering if Naruto was okay. Then an arm emerged with a pile of rubble. Fu blinked. Well, you don't see that every day. She stood up and leaned over the pit, peering into its depths. Far below, buried amidst the rocks and soil, she could spy a head of silver hair, a leg, and copious bloodstains. Hidden. She hazarded. Who's up there? A pause, then, hey. You're that bitch that was with the blonde and Kakazu. Get me out of here. What the? She created a number of earth clones and then jumped into the hole, being careful to avoid the body parts strewn about. You look like you've seen better days. Hey, that bastard from Konoha thought his dogma could trump mine, but Jashin-sama always finds a way to reward his faithful followers. You should consider converting to, ow, be careful. Lifting his head by his silver hair, Fu brought Hidden's purple eyes level with her own and stared at him. You know, I can see why Kakazu would want to get rid of you. That old bastard doesn't understand the tenets of my faith. Fu yanked on Hidden's hair, causing the Jashinist to emit a yelp of pain. I'd be careful with what you say about Kakuzu in my presence, she stated coldly, especially since he's the one who has to sew you back together. Hidden muttered something under his breath, but the green-haired girl merely threw his head out of the pit. Hidden screamed epithets at her the whole while. Hey, she called up, gaining the attention of one of her clones. Finish up here. Bring Hidden to where I am when you're done. Her duplicate nodded in understanding and then Fu was off, traveling underground to avoid the line of sight of the deer. Feeling that she was a safe distance away, she surfaced from the ground and took to the trees, heading towards where she could sense the foul chakra from earlier. Alright, start talking, she demanded. Willingly initiating communication with me. Buzzed the Nanabe idly. What an amusing turn of events. Talk, Beetle, she growled. Your sense of humor disappears rather quickly when it comes to the fox's cage. When Fu didn't react, the seven tails hummed disappointedly. As I said, that explosion of chakra was the Kyuubi's. Given that the boy has never drawn on that damnable Kitsune's chakra previously, something must have occurred to make him so enraged that he is drawing upon it subconsciously. It is possible that the fox has some control of the boy's body. So what do we do? The Nanabe's strange laughter echoed in her mind again. It is none of my business if the Kyuubi influences your infatuation. Intent on trying to come up with a game plan, Fu opted to ignore the Biju's mocking remark. Don't you hate the Kyuubi? Wouldn't you just love the opportunity to rub it in the Kyuubi's face that you, the so-called great bringer of dust storms, defeated it? ZZT ZZT ZZT. Clever girl, manipulating my pride in such a manner. You truly are an interesting container. Fu took that as the Nanabe's agreement to help. As the greenery thinned to nothing and the powerful chakra signature that the beetle had marked as the Kyuubi's grew stronger, Fu grew more and more apprehensive of what she would find. What had happened? Why had Naruto drawn on the Kyuubi's power? Was he okay? And with Hidden around, where was Kakuzu? The former Taki Nin stopped at the edge of a forest of dead trees, the trunks splintered and broken. Most of them had collapsed under the explosion of some force, a great majority sustaining scorch marks upon their wooden surfaces. Fu stared at the scene, wide-eyed. What happened here? RRRAAAAAWWRR. Fu tried to maintain her balance as the raw shockwave blew past her. She moved forward cautiously despite her fear of what awaited her, concern for Naruto and Kakuzu overwhelming her sense of self-preservation. The sight that greeted her kept her momentarily paralyzed. Whole and partial bodies were strewn about a shallow, circular crater that was devoid of any sort of obstacles, trees, rocks, anything. Several of the corpses were garbed in outfits reminiscent of Konoha's Anbu, and blood was splattered liberally everywhere. One of the bodies, Fu realized, a hand coming up to cover her mouth, was the tall, distinctive form of Kakuzu, his usual head and facial coverings absent. She had little time to consider the old Nukanen's apparent death, however, as there was a larger problem before her. Standing on all fours was what Fu presumed to be her fellow Jinchuriki, his skin a mixture of red and black. Vulpine ears stood atop his head, his eyes a blank, unseeing white. Red-orange chakra poured off of him in waves, accenting the demonic appearance granted by his skin and sharpened claws. Four tails waved behind him. So, the fox did take control, mused the Nanabe. How interesting. Fu watched as clawed hands of pure chakra erupted from the ground and crushed a cloaked Anbu in the grasp before he could escape. Only a couple shinobi remained in the clearing, and while Fu wasn't interested in their safety, she couldn't say for sure what would happen after Naruto had killed them. What's your plan? The only way we can neutralize a Biju is with another Biju. Unfortunately for you, your seal was not designed to allow access to large amounts of my chakra at any one moment, and we are UNPRACTICED at working cohesively. So, what? You can't do anything. I didn't say that, but you should be prepared to experience a pain unlike anything you've felt before. Pushing vast quantities of chakra past the seal to exert control will not be easy, or pleasant. Fu grimaced but nodded. You'll go back when this is all over. I will not have a choice. We will not be able to maintain this form for long. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Immensely. The Kunoiki couldn't even respond as agonizing pain racked her body. She screamed as the Nanabe's chakra flooded her system, forming a cloak of bubbling orange chakra around her body. It took on the vague form of the Nanabe, with 6 wings sprouting from Fu's back and a long, whip-like tail extended from the base of her spine. Excellent, buzzed the Nanabe as he took control of Fu's body, flapping the chakra wings and rising into the air. It has been far too long since I've experienced flight. Hey, don't waste any time, Fu shouted in her mind. Nag. The wings vibrated even faster, creating a whirlwind of dust that swept into the clearing and engulfed an unsuspecting Anbu. When the twister faded away, there was nothing left of the shinobi. Ah, the joy of atomizing your foolish race. Fu watched from behind her Biju's eyes as Naruto sent out his chakra arms at the remaining two Anbu, and despite their initial resistance, both were eventually torn apart by the Jinchuriki's makeshift claws. ZZT, I suppose it's time to step in and put the Kyuubi in his place. A gust of wind blew out towards Naruto, intended to catch the attention of the transformed Jinchuriki. Hello, Kyuubi, buzzed the Seven Tails mockingly as Naruto turned his attention towards him. The boy roared in response, creating a shockwave which came close to blowing the other Jinchuriki out of the air. Come, my sibling, rasped the Nanabe, we shall see WHO is more powerful. Chakra arms extended towards the cloaked Jinchuriki, but the Nanabe used his flying prowess to maneuver around the limbs and dive at Naruto. Fu's body slammed into Naruto's, sending the transformed Jinchuriki sliding back several feet. Naruto swiped at the airborne Jinchuriki, but the Nanabe blocked the blow with his chakra wings. The claw tips of the chakra appendage disintegrated, atomized by the contact with the Seven Tails chakra cloak. Even the strength of your current form is not enough to protect you from my abilities, boasted the Biju. He called upon Fu's control over Doton, raising a series of earthen spires that angled at Naruto. One swipe of his four tails fractured the stones, leaving rocky stumps behind. Flapping his wings hard, the Nanabe sent a tornado of wind at the transformed Jinchuriki, disorienting him. Flying close to the earth, he stuck his chakra tail underground as Naruto broke through the whirlwind and roared, dividing his chakra into multiple appendages to attack the cloaked Jinchuriki. The Nanabe wrapped more chakra around Fu's body to protect against the limbs. Using his jailer's body as a distraction, his tail emerged behind the transformed Jinchuriki and whipped forward, the tip driving into Naruto's spine. He roared as the Seven Tails channeled chakra into his body, disintegrating muscle and tissue that the Kyuubi was forced to regenerate. The Biju laughed as Naruto's body convulsed. Where is your boasting now, fox? He gloated. Said the pot to the kettle. You should be more grateful for my services. I could have simply left your infatuation to the Kyuubi's clutches. Single quote, comma, single quote. If you desire to bring the boy back, you need to reach out to him and help him suppress the Kyuubi. You can't do it. Neither our relationship nor theirs is at the point where we can reach out to one another with any effectiveness. We are close enough to make a tentative mental connection, and I can keep the jailer contained. However, I would recommend you hurry. This form will not last much longer. Will do. And, thanks. That gratitude will not last long. Fu was too busy focusing on a method to reach Naruto to pay attention to her Biju. Due to the Nanabe taking control of her body, she had essentially been relegated to sitting in her mindscape and watching what was happening. Now, eyes closed, she focused on the implicit connection between Jinchuriki and Biju, trying to extend it to Naruto like they had back in Konoha after meeting Gaara. She strained to feel some sort of bond between her and her fellow Jinchuriki, her partner in crime and savior. Naruto, she called, praying for a response from the darkness. Where are you? You need to get control. Naruto. LLL. Naruto felt like he was asleep. There was no real awareness of where he was or what he was doing, only the vague knowledge that his body was moving without his say-so. Coursing through his veins was a strange bloodlust, one that he wasn't used to feeling. Naruto. The blonde tried to open his eyes, tried to look around, but the unusual lethargy that had seeped into his bones made the actions impossible. Somewhere in the recesses of his mind, he recognized the voice as familiar, feminine in pitch with a distinctly urgent undertone. He struggled to move, fought to gain some semblance of control over his body, but only the darkness of his eyelids greeted him. Where are you? You need to get control. I'm trying. He wanted to shout back, but his mouth wouldn't open, vocal cords struck dumb. Every aspect of his body felt restrained, shackled by chains or glued shut. The lack of control over his own body frustrated him, making him feel even more helpless than when. When what? There was a block on his memory, as if everything that had happened recently and was happening currently was covered by a film. Vague images and shapes danced in his mind's eye, practically mocking him with their nearness and his inability to distinguish them. The knowledge that he should know these things and yet didn't was even more galling than the fact that he was unable to move. He struggled against the invisible bonds keeping him restrained, wanting to know what was going on, who and what he couldn't remember. Naruto. The blonde's eyes snapped open. Fu. He sat up like a shot, wide blue's eyes taking in his surroundings. Water dripped off his body and from his blonde locks, creating ripples in the shallow liquid he was already seated in. Pleasant, he muttered, lifting an arm and watching the water flow to his fingertips and then off them. This is my mindscape. His gaze drifted to the wall where the web of Jiongu hung, eyes narrowing at the lack of masks that represented his Doton and Suton hearts. What happened? He wondered. Damn that girl and that accursed insect. Naruto winced at the volume of the voice, his head throbbing. He got up and turned slowly to meet the bloodshot gaze of the Kyuubi. What did you do? He demanded. I don't answer to you, snarled the beast. Throwing caution to the wind, Naruto stepped forward and rapped his knuckles against the iron bars of the cage. I think you do. The Kyuubi growled at him, a low reverberation that echoed around the mindscape. Then the fox's deep chuckling rang out, confusing the blonde slightly. You. So quick to place the blame elsewhere. I only took advantage of your own emotional turmoil. Naruto rubbed the bridge of his nose. Dealing with the fox was a taxing effort. Will you stop speaking in riddles and just tell me what's going on? I'm a living mass of malevolence and other negative emotions. When you became enraged, you subconsciously drew upon a copious amount of my chakra. The fox paused, allowing another amused chuckle to escape. This is just further proof that you are incapable of controlling my power. If that damned butterfly hadn't interfered, I would be on my way to Konoha by now. The Kyuubi rumbled in such a delighted way that Naruto was tempted to call it a purr. The feel of flesh and blood between my paws, the futility of the ants as they tried to fight back, how I missed it all. It's truly a shame there weren't more victims to crush. How dare that insect interfere with my fun? Tragic, Naruto muttered. You won't get another chance to take over my body again, he warned his tenant. I don't need your power. I'll rely on my own strength and the abilities Kakuzu gave me. He turned and walked away from the cage. You'll return for my power one day, brat, called the Biju. Your mentor was unable to win with his own strength, and you would be dead without mine. Remember that. The fox's words echoed in his mind as Naruto's consciousness returned to the real world. Blue eyes blinked open slowly, adjusting to the vision of the open sky. A loud and obnoxious voice immediately made itself known. Him up. I want my body back so I can sacrifice that heathen to Jashin-sama. I'm not a medical expert, hidden, I can't just control when he's going to wake up. If that bastard Kakuzu had just prayed for Jashin-sama's forgiveness, maybe he'd still be alive to do this. Now I have to wait for this blonde weenie to wake his ass up. Kaku, AGGGHH. Naruto, cried Fu, leaning over him. The blonde was convulsing on the ground, his body racked with spasms from sitting up too quickly because of Hidden's announcement. Every nerve in his body screamed at him simultaneously, feeling like they'd been set on fire. You might want to take it easy, Fu cautioned, wincing herself. Accessing the Biju's chakra apparently has some negative repercussions for anyone who uses it. I did say that you would regret thanking me. ZZT ZZT ZZT. Naruto watched Fu's movements with a careful eye. His companion seemed to be going through controlled motions, unwilling to move more than absolutely necessary. He slowly reached out a hand to her, but stopped when his own appendage came within his range of vision. Instead of the tanned flesh the teenager was used to, his skin was a bright red, almost as if he'd stayed in a hot spring for far too long. What happened to me? He managed. Fu looked distinctly downcast as she thought about how to respond. You were like some sort miniature Kyuubi. 4 tails, claws, ears. I had to use the Nanabe's chakra to restrain you. She rubbed a hand over an arm self-consciously. It came with a price. Looking closer at the girl, Naruto could make out the barest hint of a scale pattern on her arms. He clenched his fist tightly, gritting his teeth against the pain shooting through his arm. Enning, damn it all. Everything's screwed up. What would Kakuzu do? Kakuzu, where's Kakuzu? Fu gestured to the side. I'm not sure how, but he managed to escape all the fighting. His body's over there. Yeah, shouted Hidden, boo freaking who and all that shit. Now put my body back together. Shut up, snapped both Jinchuriki. They exchanged wan smiles. Must have been channeling Kakuzu, Naruto wisecracked. Yeah. Fu agreed. She glanced at the body of their mentor. What do we do? She whispered. Get over your fucking self. Hiden yelled. Put me. He was cut off abruptly as Naruto's arm extended and grabbed his head around his mouth. The blonde reeled the immortal's head in, bringing their eyes even. You talk too much, he commented, commanding a thread to weave Hiden's lips together. Much better, he sighed, tossing the head away amidst the man's muffled threats. Naruto pushed himself to a sitting position, ignoring the feeling of raw skin being stretched and the pain that came with movement. Pieces of his flesh were already starting to reappear, slowly, spurred forward by the Kyuubi's regenerative powers. We move forward, he resolved. I think, that's what he would want. You know, he smiled wryly, if he wasn't such a tremendous prick. Both Jinchuriki grew momentarily pensive, honoring the memory of their fallen instructor. At length, Naruto managed to get to his feet, the after effects of the Kyuubi's chakra a dull ache. Well, guess I should help Hiden. Maybe Pain will appreciate the favor. Wanna help? Fu offered him a smile that was partially contorted by a grimace. As much fun as that sounds, it hurts if I move too much. My body wasn't meant to use so much of the Nanabe's chakra at once. Naruto offered her an apologetic gesture. Thanks though. He looked around at the clearing they were in, noting the lack of trees, various holes, and puddles of blood. Bodies were spread throughout the area, some halved at the torso, others missing arms or legs or heads. So, this is what happens when the Kyuubi takes over, huh? The blonde moved to kneel beside the nearest corpse, missing an arm and possessing a fist-shaped hole through his chest. Pretty gruesome. His eyes hardened. They deserved to suffer. Staring at the corpse filled Naruto with a sense of vindication, knowing that he had properly avenged Kakuzu despite not being fully in control of his actions. His hand reached out of its own accord and gripped the porcelain white mask decorating the body's face. He removed it to see the insignia of the hidden leaf etched into the man's forehead protector. Konoha, again, the hidden leaf haunted him, perpetually spurring his hatred and desire for vengeance. The blonde was filled with a sudden compulsion to take the item, so he ripped the Hate from its place and pocketed it. There would be time later to digest all that had happened. Right now, he was needed. He turned away from the scene and walked over to where Hiden's body parts were stacked in a pile. You've certainly seen better days, he commented, unknowingly echoing Fu's earlier words and picking up an arm. That was stitched back into the shoulder, the opposite one following with a suture just below the elbow. He worked his way through the rest of the pile until all that was left was the head. Watching Jiongu reattach Hiden's head to his neck, Naruto was struck by inspiration. I wonder, can Kakuzu's body accept a heart? The idea was a bit radical. Corpses certainly weren't meant to function by arbitrarily shoving new hearts into them and hoping they would just come back to life. Heart transplants were lengthy and in-depth operations that required careful planning and understanding of the cardiovascular system. But that applied to normal humans. Jiongu, by its very nature, had altered Kakuzu's body to become adept at switching out organs with startling ease, even replacing hearts autonomously after the previous one had failed. Based on that, it wasn't so outlandish to believe that an implanted heart from another Jiongu user could theoretically bring Kakuzu back to life. There was nothing to be lost from at least trying. He limped over to Kakuzu's body and kneeled beside it. Reaching for the Doton heart stored on his back, the blonde was surprised to discover that he couldn't feel the power of the earth-release chakra nature flowing through his body. A second feel revealed the lack of his Sutan affinity as well. Interesting, he mused, thinking back to the empty web in his mindscape. Did the Kyuubi's chakra destroy the hearts? Naruto shook his head. There was time for speculation later. Right now, he needed an extra heart. Not wanting to move, he called, Hiden, I need you to bring me someone. Alive, he clarified. When his only response was the purple-eyed man glowering hatefully at him, the blonde sighed. His arm shot out and touched the man, mentally commanding the thread binding Hiden's lips together to unweave. Body, if you would be so kind. Chop chop. TCH, you and Kakuzu are exactly the same. Perish the thought, Naruto muttered. Forcing me to become blasphemous traitors like you. It's a sin to leave a sacrifice alive. Naruto stared at him. Let me make this simple, he said, a tinge of frost entering his tone. Find me a damn body, bring it to me alive, or I'll undo all my work and have Fu put you back in whatever hellhole she found you in pieces. Got it? Hidden laughed. Like you could. Just look at the sorry shape your ass is in. If you do this, Naruto began after a moment of thought, deciding that threats wouldn't work, Kakazu will end up being in your debt. The former Yunin paused to consider the implications of that statement. Ha ha. Then he'll have to allow me to give my respect to Jashin-sama without complaining. He walked past Naruto to pick up his scythe, which the blonde was surprised to find undamaged from the turmoil of his assault. My lord will be most pleased with my renewed dedication. Sure. Right, agreed the blonde. Hiden's yammering didn't make much sense to him, but agreeing with the man seemed to be the best option in getting him to do as Naruto wanted. Hiden immediately went on some tangent that Naruto instinctively tuned out. How Kakazu had managed to travel around the continent with Hiden for over a year baffled the blonde. 5 minutes with the Jashinist was enough to drive him crazy. Do you ever shut? Crap. Wooden beams erupted from the earth around Naruto and Hiden. The Jinchuriki activated a hasty violent wind palm aimed at the ground and ended up blasting himself into the air and onto a tree bough as the prison finished erecting itself. If the yelling was any indication, Hiden had not been fortunate enough to escape. Tenzo stepped out of the shadows. Well done, Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Are you kidding me? Naruto exclaimed, resisting the urge to scream in a mixture of pain and frustration. How did you even find me? I am highly attuned to the amount of chakra thrown off by the Biju. The output that I felt coming from this area made it easy to find you. Fucking fox. Naruto snarled in his mind. You have only yourself to blame. Come with me, Jinchuriki, and I will let your friend go free, offered Tenzo. Oi, that little pansy and I aren't friends. Couldn't have said it better myself, Naruto muttered. Still, regardless of the definition of his and Hiden's relationship, the former Yunin was the blonde's best chance to escape. Naruto was in no condition to fight, just activating the futon, Repusho had brought about a surge of agony. How do I free Hiden? Those wooden pillars are practically indestructible. He glanced to the side to find Fu gone from her original position. So I have to distract him, huh? This'll be fun. If you want me, come get me, he taunted. I feel like I'm gonna regret that. Despite the cat mask that hid Tenzo's face, Naruto had the distinct impression that the Anbu was scowling at him. The man performed seals, and Naruto jumped off the tree branch as a block of wood grew from the trunk. He looped several threads of Jiongu around the limb and vaulted himself to the next tree, wincing slightly at the impact. Your help might be appreciated, he told the Kyuubi. You complain about the effects of my chakra, and then you beg for my assistance. What happened to not relying on my power? Don't need your power, just your healing ability. I prefer to watch you suffer. Bastard. He weaved through the tree trunks as a series of wooden blocks chased after him, all growing from Tenzo's arm. All he needed to do was stall the Anbu agent until Fu could free Hiden. Meanwhile, the green-haired girl was staring at the Akatsuki member through the wooden bars of the man's prison. Hiden, apparently, was unsatisfied with her lack of progress. Are you gonna just keep looking at me, or are you gonna do something, you stupid bitch? Yeah, yell at me, that'll help. Ideas. She prompted the Nanabe. 1. Tell the loudmouth to move to one side. Hiden, move. She was surprised when the Jashinist obeyed without protesting. Prepare yourself. Fu grimaced as the Nanabe pushed its chakra through the seal, creating a pair of wings that sprouted from her spine. She vibrated them quickly at the Biju's behest, sending out a burst of his chakra before the wings dissipated. That should do. The cage keeping Hiden contained was now half the size, a concave shape carved out of one end. Hiden walked out of the opening, twirling his scythe expertly with one hand. Where's the masked fucker? Not far, Fu gasped, bent over on hands and knees. He'll become a sacrifice to Jashin-sama. Then he was gone, cackling madly. Fu struggled to her feet, breath coming in labored pants. Allowing the Nanabe to squeeze out that last bit of chakra had told her exhausted body to its limit. She limped over to the wooden prison and leaned against it, trying to control the sharp throb pounding in her head and resonating throughout her body. How do we get out of here? Naruto stumbled into the clearing then, tumbling head over feet and ending up on his rear. He shook his head and got up slowly. We need to go, he said. Hiden's keeping Tenzo busy. You trust Hiden? Not particularly, no, admitted the blonde. But every trait that makes him a nuisance also makes him a good distraction. Besides, he continued, walking over to Kakazu's body, all else aside, Hiden is still an S-class Nukenin. He can handle himself. We need to worry about us. Let's go. LLL. Carrying Kakuzu was hard, Naruto realized. Granted, the man was over a head taller than him and weighed at least 40 pounds more, so the awkwardness of trying to travel with him was understandable, but still, Naruto was not cut out to be a pack mule. Especially not in the condition the Kyuubi's chakra had left his body in. Damn the fox. He cursed mentally, adjusting the placement of Kakuzu's body on his back. Without either of his other hearts, his ability to produce solid clones was non-existent. Unlike Kakuzu, he couldn't yet use chakra natures other than wind without the hearts, which was unfortunate given how useful they would be in the current situation. Struggling forward with his mentor weighing him down, Naruto glanced behind to check Fu's progress. His fellow Jinchuriki trudged in his footsteps, pained flinches accompanying every step. We'll never make it like this, he realized sourly. Oto is too far, and neither of us are in peak health. Working his mind furiously for a solution, Naruto almost slapped himself as he landed upon one. Dropping Kakuzu's body to the ground and ignoring Fu's half-formed question of what he was doing, the blonde ran through a set of familiar hand signs. Kuchio's no jutsu, he uttered wearily, feeding what chakra he had recovered into the technique. Kamagenso appeared in a cloud of smoke. One black eye rotated so it could stare at the blonde. Hello, Naruto, greeted the reptile. Hey, Genso, returned his summoner. Sorry to ask this of you, but we kinda need a ride. The chameleon's other eye roved from Fu clutching her shoulder in pain, to the prone form of Kakuzu. No problem. His tongue shot out and stuck to Kakuzu, bringing the corpse into his mouth with no questions. Naruto and Fu were quick to follow. Where to? He questioned, more still open. North. Naruto replied, to Otogakur. He gazed cautiously at the surrounding area, paranoia gripping him. Hidden was nigh indestructible, and Naruto supposed his skill was decent, but Anbu were tenacious, and the Jinchuriki didn't fully trust the silver-haired man to keep Tenzo at bay for long. And if you could be camouflaged, that'd be great. Kamagenso rumbled unintelligibly and closed his mouth, activating the ability of the chameleons to turn invisible. From inside the reptile, Naruto and Fu tried to find stability with each step Kamagenso took. The chameleon's gait was slow, and the blonde was sure that the trip to Oto would take some time, but it was better than trekking even more slowly by foot. He leaned against the wall of the summon's mouth and closed his eyes, allowing the monotonous movement of the chameleon's walk to lull him to sleep. Naruto wasn't sure how much time had passed, but the chameleon's rumblings stirred him from his slumber and into groggy wakefulness. Wah! There are men out here threatening me if I don't stop. Ah, troublesome gatekeepers. I suppose it's good that they're doing the job. You can go now, Genso, he said. And thanks for the help. It was my pleasure, Naruto. He disappeared, leaving the blonde to drop 10 feet to the ground. Naruto landed gracefully between the thud of Kakuzu's body hitting the ground and Fu's muted groan of pain. Apparently she had still been asleep. He waved to the guards. Tell your angel that Uzumaki Naruto has come to call on her god. The guards held a whispered conference before one of them disappeared. Naruto sat down in the dirt and waited patiently for a response. Conan arrived in a flurry of paper almost 20 minutes later, an emotionless expression plastered upon her face. Come, she beckoned. Naruto hefted Kakuzu's body over his shoulder again and followed the blue-haired woman, Fu beside him. Conan was apparently not one for small talk, for the journey was made in relative silence. The blonde wondered if she actually knew what had happened through some method privy to the full-fledged Akatsuki members, but was shaken from that musing by her divergence away from the path he remembered Pain's tower being. Where are we going? He asked. Hospital, was the curt reply. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Did he know about this? That Kakuzu and Hidden were in trouble. Pain is aware of everything. Anger boiled slowly in the pit of Naruto's stomach, but he restrained himself from saying anything else, instead focusing on moving forward with the burden of his mentor's weight. They reached the hospital soon enough, and Conan directed them towards a secluded room with grey walls and surgical equipment. Wait here, she commanded before disappearing. Naruto laid Kakuzu down on one of two beds while Fu sat on the other, body slumping in relief. Was it really wise to come back here? She asked. Do you have a better idea? Fu looked down. I suppose not. She trailed off as a powerful presence became noticeable in the room. Both Jinchuriki looked up to see Pain standing in the doorway, face expressionless. The orange-haired man stared at him, like they were specimens under a microscope. Finally, he said, "I believe it is prudent that we speak." Naruto fought down the surge of anger directed at Pain, instead raising his head slowly to look the older man in his ringed, gray eyes. "Get me a heart, a shinobi's, a civilian's, a prisoner's for all I care," he stated in a dangerously calm voice, "and then we can talk." Pain bore the boy's flat expression without any change in his own. After a minute of intense staring, he nodded, mentally contacting Konan and telling her to bring in a prisoner from the cells. The blue-haired woman appeared several minutes later with a man bound and gagged. He was forced to kneel before Naruto, hatred burning in his eyes. The blonde's own blue eyes were cold, glittering like ice in the light of the hospital room. There was no mercy present in those orbs as black threads wriggled out from his forearm and dug into the man's skin. Moments later, his heart was torn from his body in a spray of blood, the organ pumping solidly in Naruto's hand. He turned to the bed and placed the heart on his mentor's chest, directly over the long suture running from his clavicle to his pectoral. Jiongu pried open the stitch and deposited the organ inside before withdrawing back into its wielder. Naruto waited with bated breath to see if his long-shot idea would work. Each second that passed felt like a lifetime, but finally, Kakazu's body convulsed once, a rattling gasp escaping his mouth. The Nukanen's threads stitched shut the opening on his chest, and Naruto bowed his head in silent relief that his teacher was alive. Konan walked over and felt the man's pulse before hooking him up to a variety of machines. "Heartbeat is slow but steady," she reported, although brain function is minimal. She turned to Pain. "I believe the trauma of dying may have placed him in some sort of vegetative state." "What?" Pain placed a hand upon Naruto's shoulder and gripped it tightly. "Come with me," he ordered. "It is time for us to have a conversation." "But Kakazu, you have done what you could," Pain interjected, "unless you have extensive knowledge of the medical field." He exchanged glances with Konan, who immediately swept out of room. The gray-eyed man turned to lead Naruto down the hall, but paused in the doorway. "I found this in Orochimaru's library," he mentioned, reaching into his sleeve and pulling out a tightly rolled scroll. He tossed it behind him towards Fu, who had remained quiet throughout the entire ordeal. "I think you might find it interesting." Then he walked out, and Naruto had no choice but to follow. The blonde trotted to catch up to the taller man. "What did you give her?" "Information," Pain replied, "which I can only assume Orochimaru managed to obtain from the office of the Chushikage many years ago." Naruto opened his mouth to ask for specifics, but Fu's piercing shriek of, "What do you mean Jinton uses Katon?" interrupted him. Pain turned to find Naruto glancing back down the way they had come. "Tell me," he began, causing the younger shinobi to whip his head towards him, "what it was like to lose your mentor." The blonde's face morphed into an expression of rage. "You knew," he accused, "you knew that Kakazu was gonna die." "I did not. Don't lie," snarled the Jinchuriki, marching up to Pain and getting in his face as best as he could. "I trust my subordinates to be able to fend for themselves," stated the orange-haired man. "They are shinobi of repute who are not easily overwhelmed. You let him die because you thought he could handle himself." Akatsuki's leader stared the Jinchuriki in his blue eyes. "Tell me, do you think Kakazu would have been pleased to be rescued?" Naruto took a moment to consider that idea, some of the anger leaving his system at the thought of his mentor's reaction to being saved by another. "I thought not." He turned away from the blonde and continued walking. "By the time I had become aware of the situation, it was too late to do anything. His death would have been an unfortunate event if you hadn't returned him to the world of the living." "Zetsu can pop out from trees," Naruto retorted. "He could have gotten there in a flash. Don't tell me it was too late to do anything. Zetsu is not a frontline shinobi. I prefer to minimize casualties." They turned a corner. "Now you understand the true definition of pain." Naruto was confused by the abrupt subject change. What? There are many variations of pain. Physical pain, such as the loss of a limb or the breaking of bones. Emotional pain, experienced through the loss of those we are close to. Spiritual pain, often felt through empathy. Humans are, on the whole, a pathetic and fragile race of creatures. Yet, despite all these different types of pain, there is only one true pain. Ringed, gray eyes turned to the blonde. "You have felt it." Naruto thought back to the forest of dead trees, of watching the one person who had given him a chance fall to the ground and lay there, unmoving. The knowledge that Kakazu, The closest thing he had to a father figure, sad as that was, had died, had given rise to such feelings of hatred and agony that he had called upon droves of the Kyuubi's chakra and morphed into a miniature version of the Biju. The blonde turned blue eyes filled with comprehension towards Akatsuki's leader. You have realized it, Pain intoned. People, by nature, cling to others and create communities based on these connections. They experience sadness when people they know die, but there are others to help them move on, to fill the void. But for those who don't have such a network, the loss of a parent or a friend is keenly felt. As a Jinchuriki, you have a good grasp of what this is like. The death of the only person you are close to, that is true pain. And this foolish world and its wars know nothing of that. There was a lull as Pain allowed Naruto to consider his words before he continued, you are fortunate. There are not many people who can claim to have experienced such pain and then get a chance to talk to the person who passed. You should take advantage of such an opportunity. Pain began to walk away, but Naruto's quiet call of, wait, stopped him. What? When did you know the true meaning of pain? Konoha Nin invaded my home during the Second Shinobi World War and killed my parents, who were civilians. That was the first time. He paused. Years later, my motivation to fight for peace died doing what he thought was right. He saved my life and inspired Akatsuki's goals. It's hard, not being able to tell someone how hugely they've impacted your life, isn't it? Nagato thought of how Yahiko only lived on as a puppet, serving as the deva path of the bodies known collectively as pain. He could only hope that wherever he was, Yahiko would be satisfied with the ultimate plan he had put together to bring peace to the world. Yes, he said at last, it is. Hey, Naruto called as Pain started walking again. You know that Hidden's lost somewhere, right? Of course. I know everything. Left alone in the hallway, Naruto found himself ruminating on Pain's dialogue. He reached into his pocket and withdrew the Konoha Hate 8, gazing at the metal thoughtfully. After a moment, a tendril of Jiongu slipped out from underneath his skin and, with a tiny application of wind chakra, scored the headband. It would be his permanent reminder that the hidden leaf would pay for all the pain it had caused him. LLL. Fu was as close to seething as she had ever been. I've been using it wrong the entire time. She screeched. Obnoxious girl, the Nanabe buzzed irritably, SHOULDN, TUB in too much pain to bother me. She had cracked open the scroll as Naruto and Pain had left the hospital room and started perusing its contents. It was apparently written by the second host of the Nanabe, the brother of the man who would become the Nadaime Chushikage. And it had labeled Jinten as a combination of Doton, Futon, and Kaiten affinities. Outraged at this new revelation, Fu had immediately entered her mindscape to confront the Seven Tails. Why didn't you tell me? Don. You have better things to complain about. Your scales, for instance. I knew there would be consequences to using your power when I agreed to let you take over, she snapped. What I didn't think was that you would keep information from me that would risk my life, your life. Arms crossed, she tapped her foot impatiently, glaring through the honeyed bars of the Biju's cage. Now, are you going to start talking, or am I just going to have to read this scroll? She asked, waving a conjured image of said object in front of the demon's sight. What an interesting container you are, rasped the beetle. Fu rolled her eyes. That seemed to be the Nanabe's go-to phrase whenever she managed to surprise him. Fine. Many years ago, I was captured by the shinobi of Iwagakure. They sealed me into a human, but sealing methods for the Biju were not well conceived at that time, and I broke free within 2.5 years. Of course, in that time frame, they came up with new ones, and I was immediately sealed within my second host. He was adept. He came to understand my powers and found a way to channel them into an advanced chakra nature that he called Jinton. During that time, his brother Mu spied on him and managed to recreate the Jinton chakra nature for his own uses. He became the Nidaimetsuchikage, and his brother, my Jinchuriki, was traded to Takigakure as part of a universal peace treaty for my sibling, the Gobi. They apparently believed they could keep the status quo by controlling a Biju with more tails, especially since IWA already possessed the Yonbi. Regardless, the Taki Shinobi immediately extracted me and sealed me into my third container. You are my fifth. Quite a colorful history, Fu commented. So, you said that this second Jinchuriki created Jinten by channeling your powers. What's that mean? I am renowned as the Great Demolisher. Every beat of my wings has the ability to atomize people, to molecularise objects, to disintegrate the very mountains into heaps of dust. More boasting, what a shock, muttered the Jinchuriki. Didn't stop you from getting captured in the first place, now did it? The Nanabe buzzed angrily, the vibrations of his wings slamming against the bars of his cage. So that's what happened when I fought that guy from Oto during the invasion, she realized, recalling how the teenager had exited her body without an arm. Why did you never tell me this? I've been wasting all my time with this half-assed version when the real Jinten sounds incredibly powerful. You made an assumption. You were wrong. I found your new method to be intriguing. It possessed potential, and you made impressive strides in adapting it to your whims. For a human, anyway. Your arrogance isn't very becoming. Regardless, the bastardized version of Jinton you created became useful. The real version is highly chakra-intensive and requires a great deal of time to prepare. In addition, it is not extraordinarily conducive to your chosen profession of bounty hunting. No body means no payment. Did you just make a joke? You have proven to be an intriguing Jinchuriki, noted the Seven Tails somewhat reluctantly. This time, it almost sounded like a compliment rather than idle musing. I look forward to seeing where you go with this new knowledge. Thanks for being helpful this time, Fu said before returning to the real world. LLL. Hello, Hiden-san. You look like you've seen better days. Or, shut up, plant bastard. Aren't you gonna tell us what happened? Some Konoha asshole resisted being sacrificed for Jashin-sama's great will. Cowardly bastard ran off after attacking with a bunch of trees. So you weren't able to kill him. How embarrassing. Shut up. What are you here for, anyway? Follow us. We're here to take you back to meet your partner. So the bastard survived, huh? Maybe now he'll have a greater appreciation for Jashin-sama. No wonder Kakuzu doesn't like him. He's obnoxious. Hey, I'm right here, asshole. LLL. Kakuzu woke up on the third day of their stay in the Hidden Sound. He was a bit disoriented and extremely grouchy, but Naruto was too happy to see him alive to care about his personality. Then the mercenary went and commented on how pathetic it was for him to be so emotional, and Naruto remembered exactly why the man was such a pain to deal with. In a way, it was almost nostalgic. That was when Hiden entered the room and proceeded to mock the former Taki Nin, resulting in an insult match between the two. Naruto sighed somewhat exasperatedly. Some things never truly changed. Very little had occurred during Kakuzu's bout of unconsciousness. Fu had remained hospitalized for a solid day, alternating between sleeping and reading the scroll pain had given her. Even after recovering from her overuse of the Nanabe's chakra, she had pored over the parchment with a fire in her orange eyes, trying to absorb the knowledge like a sponge. Sometimes she had disappeared for stretches of time, though she had always returned muttering incredulously about ratios and three elements. Naruto found he didn't quite possess the brevity to ask if she had finally succumbed to insanity, and so left his companion to brood in peace. Hiden, surprisingly, had shown up not long before the end of the first day, talking loudly and complaining about woodfuckers and plant assholes. The blonde had guesses about the Jashinist's irate mood, but decided that not engaging Hiden in conversation was a better idea than any of the alternatives. Conan had appeared each day to check on Kakuzu's condition, and Pain had returned once to drag Hiden away, offering to explain Akatsuki's plans in full to the silver-haired man. Naruto had been grateful for the reprieve from the immortal's voice. Despite the strange urge to maintain a bedside vigil on Kakuzu the entire time, the mercenary hardly needed protection, he thought sarcastically. Naruto had opted to roam the village hidden in sound and explore what it had to offer. The feeling of tranquility the village exuded had calmed the tumultuous mixture of emotions the blonde had experienced over the past several days. Otogakure possessed a homey feel that Naruto, a wanderer with no permanent abode, found oddly relaxing. That hadn't prevented him from popping in to check on Kakuzu's condition every so often, but otherwise the rest of his time had been spent planning his next steps. Frustratingly, wait for Kakuzu to wake up had remained the constant priority, his only anchor to not leaving Oto at a moment's notice. Now that the man was awake, though, Naruto felt a weight lift off his chest. He sort of missed his teacher's sarcastic ripostes and snarky commentary. Kakuzu's green eyes settled their stoic gaze on his blonde disciple, sliding wordlessly over the scored forehead protector he now wore and settling into an intense gaze into his pupil's blue orbs. You revived me, he stated questioningly, using Jiongu. Naruto nodded. Yeah. Intriguing. Then his gaze hardened into something akin to scorn. Your sentiment will be the death of you someday. Naruto spluttered, outraged. My sentiment will be my death. You died from your arrogance. And I saved you. Out of attachment, Kakazu snorted, not necessity. Resurrecting the dead is a fool's errand. You could at least thank me. Hardly. Hey, Kakazu, Hidden interrupted, what was hell like? A blaspheming bastard like you definitely went there. I bet your wrinkled old ass got roasted. I would like a word with Kakazu, interjected a different voice before Kakazu could retort. All eyes turned to the doorway to find Pain standing there, face expressionless. The former Taki Nin rose in bed so that he was upright, back leaning against the pillows. Hidden snorted. TCH, fine. He pushed past the orange-haired man, his grumblings echoing down the corridor. Naruto glanced between the two men. Go, brat, Kakazu dismissed. We shall talk later. The blonde hesitated, but then bobbed his head and left. Kakazu waited until he was sure they were alone before saying, what business would you like to discuss? Pain shut the door and then moved to stand at the foot of Kakazu's bed. Your student was rather worried about your condition, he began conversationally. He demanded that I get him a heart to revive you. He paused, turning his gaze to the closed door. Such dedication is impressive. Foolish would be a more apt term. Immortality is a falsehood. The dead should remain such. Pain returned his attention to the bedridden man. How dedicated are you to Akatsuki? I am a member, am I not? Yes, but men of your caliber, of Akatsuki's caliber, all have personal agendas. At first glimpse, one would believe that yours follows whichever path proves most profitable. However, I don't believe this to be the case. At least, not in its entirety. So I ask again, how dedicated are you to Akatsuki? Kakazu stared at his superior, considering his options. In his current condition, there was certainly nothing he could do to stop Pain from killing him, though he sincerely doubted that was the man's intention. That meant that he had to engage the orange-haired man's word game and hope to give the appropriate answers. Finally, he settled on saying, I have actively pursued our targets and have not hindered Akatsuki's progress. And yet you would prefer that the two Jinchuriki remain alive rather than see Akatsuki's plans come to fruition. I dislike wasting valuable resources, replied the former Taki Nin slowly, but if the deaths are a necessity for our plans, then I will not stand in the way. Pain's grey eyes flickered towards the door once again. They have proven themselves quite useful, he commented tonelessly. Far more useful than I would have originally anticipated. Kakazu managed to reel in his surprise at what he thought was the shorter man praising the two Jinchuriki. They have become interesting assets to this organization. Kakazu's eyes narrowed. That is, positive. Once more, Pain's gaze turned back to the former Taki Nin. You should be commended for how well you trained them. I would refrain from phrasing it in such a manner. My students would argue that my teaching input was minimal at best. How would you like a second opportunity? This time, Kakazu couldn't contain the shocked widening of his eyes, though they quickly settled into a suspicious gaze. What exactly are you implying? I'm curious to see how far their loyalty extends. They have shown a strong attachment to you despite your current affiliations, and have been working for Akatsuki as long as you have despite knowing what our intentions are. Perhaps we can continue to capitalize on their usefulness, but that is only possible as long as they continue to live. Your plans have changed. Pain shook his head. No, but there may be a way to enact Akatsuki's ultimate goal without killing either of the Jinchuriki. It would require research, but the benefit of having two fully trained Jinchuriki on Akatsuki's side outweighs the risk. This is why I would like you to continue training them. And if they become stronger than you, the likelihood of that occurring is minuscule. Pain paused, then continued, this is not a guarantee that they will live. He walked to the door and opened it. You should leave when you've recovered. And take Hidden with you, his voice has become irritating to hear. Preaching to the choir, Kakazu deadpanned. Wait, he continued as the grey-eyed man made to leave the room, what made you change your mind? This is a rather abrupt shift in attitude. Some qualities people possess are rare and invaluable, Pain replied at length, lingering in the doorframe without turning around. To deprive the world of such a person before he's had the chance to fully understand himself, would be a travesty, don't you agree? Then, without waiting for a response, he was gone. Kakazu was left to ponder the cryptic words of Akatsuki's leader in silence, analytical mind working to decode just what exactly Pain had seen in Naruto that had caused him to reconsider killing both Jinchuriki. 2 days later found the mercenary healed, though in dire need of restocking his supply of hearts. With a moderately confused Naruto and Fu in tow, and a whining Hiden bringing up the rear, Kakazu and his troop departed the safety of Otogakure heading west. Ringed, Grey Eyes watched them leave, communicating a silent bid of fortitude for their journey ahead. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.